Hello, and welcome to Artificial Developer Intelligence, a podcast where two software engineers who are AI filthy casuals navigate the ever-changing AI-enabled software engineering landscape. I'm Shimin and Dan, a software developer, and with me today is my co-host. He knows everything from his training data. All you gotta do is ask him to search for them nicely. Dan Lasky. Dan, what are you thinking about today?
How many eggs I can fit into a basket?
You have to search for it multiple times
That's
and
true.
then get a majority vote.
Or write some Python code. And on deck today, we have our news threadmill where we're going to be going over yet more exciting model announcements. So can't wait to dig in there.
So many models. After that, we will be talking about the toolshed where we will cover some new Claude Developer Platform tools for its agents.
Next, we'll be jumping into our deep dive where we look at some technical articles that one of the two of us understands.
After that, we have Dan's Rant, a 2-minute segment where Dan rants about something. What could it be this week?
I promise you it'll be a bad one. Good one? Bad one? I don't know. That's part of the fun. And then finally, we have 2 minutes to midnight where we figure out how close are we to the AI bubble bursting.
Well, let's get started. Earlier this week, Anthropic released a Claude Opus 4.5, which is an upgrade of the old Opus 4.1, I believe. It is supposedly more intelligent, more efficient, and is the best model in the world for doing cognitive-heavy tasks. On our favorite benchmark, the Software Engineering Sweep Bench Verified, it scored 80.9%, beating even the Gemini 3 Pro at a mere 76.2%. I actually honestly haven't had much chance to use it yet, other than I used it earlier today for some web UI tasks. I didn't notice a huge amount of difference, but I think this is more of a coding-centric model. So
I have not used it for coding yet either, because I only have the pro plan for Claude. I don't have the fancy one. And at work, we don't have it yet on our allowed list, so hopefully that's coming soon. But until then, I probably won't get a chance to really test it in depth. Although I think also they also, as part of the same announcement, said that the prices were going down on some of the other models too, I believe, right? So maybe I'll get to use it more than I might have hoped.
Yeah, I think the price has gone down, and it's also available very wide compared to its usual kind of step introduction. Other than being better at logical tasks, Claude Opus 4.5 is also introducced as being safer than its competitors. I think Anthropic has always been perhaps more heavily focused on AI safety than its competitors. At least that's their selling point. As part of this new model's intro, there's a chart here where it shows the various Anthropic models score when it comes to prompt injection and having otherwise concerning behavior. And according to this chart, it is less susceptible to prompt injection style attacks, which I thought was also interesting. We still need to wait for actual user-based vibes, but
as always,
something to look forward to in the next week or two. What is also really interesting is, according to OpenAI, it had a side-by-side comparison of Sonnet 4.5 versus Opus 4.5, and in their demo environment where both agents were tasked to solve a puzzle. The Opus 4.5
escape room specifically, it looks like
escape room, yes,
escape room challenge,
where they have to solve 6 locks before escaping. Opus used significantly fewer tokens, so even though both models were able to solve the entire tasks, Opus was much more efficient and therefore cheaper to run.
Interesting.
And the one that probably most interests us when it comes to the eval of the model is Anthropic has what they call a notoriously difficult take-home exam for their engineering candidates. And Opus 4.5 did better in this 2-hour take-home test than any human candidate ever. So that begs the question: Is Opus? how much are they going to pay Opus 4.5 to?
I do always find it funny. Like, I don't know if you use the Claude mobile apps, but the release notes, like
Mm-hmm.
no one ever reads the release notes, but I'm the crazy person that reads the release notes on all iOS apps. So if you write an iOS
Yep.
app and you're listening to this podcast, I'm reading your notes if I'm using your app
Somebody's
anyway.
reading them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they always sign it as Claude, which kind of cracks me up.
Yeah.
And like for the longest time, I'm like, yeah, Claude's not really doing that, but maybe he is. Maybe he works there now.
Yeah, maybe Claude is just another. Maybe Claude has a pension plan from Anthropic. We can only hope.
They just pay him in private stock.
Yeah, and
It's a circular payment deal, though. We'll get into that later.
we'll get into that. Yes. Speaking of changelogs, now Claude Code is available as a part of the desktop app. There's a new code mode you can switch to, where you can have out of the box GUI for
Nice.
Claude Code. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think this is very exciting. We had so many blockbuster models being released so shortly after each other. I mean, we're not going to talk about this, but OpenAI's GPT 5.1 also came out in between last week and this week. So there's no shortage of new things to try. A little overwhelming, actually.
Yeah, it's like we're getting to have model release season. It seems like where everyone's like, not to be outdone. Here's ours. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool. And it's definitely gotten me to try to, like, given how good the benchmarks were on Gemini that we talked about last week, I was just curious about it. So I started playing around with it a little bit. And so like that's been the one cool outcome of all this for me personally, is like I've really just expanded my model horizons.
Model horizon talk. Yeah, speaking of Gemini and Gemini 3 in particular, Gemini 3's image model, what they are calling Nano Banana Pro, also came out in between last week and this week. This is the updated version of Nano Banana. Is touted as having higher fidelity and control. You have more control over the resolution and size of your images. And it is linked to web searches in real time, along with the ability to generate text very consistently, something that a lot of older image models really struggle with.
Particularly B's and R's, it seems like.
Yes. So for one thing, what you could do is use Nano Banana Pro to conduct web search and take the output of the web search and generate a infographic from it. That is one use case that I think really sets Nano Banana Pro apart from its competitors. Just the ability to have clear text generated in the image.
Yeah, it's definitely an area that could use some improvement generally. Not that I do a ton of image gen stuff compared to like code generation, but like the times that I've messed around with it, it's been like, ooh, yeah, okay. We mastered the number of fingers, but letters are still a little challenging.
Not just letters, it could do interesting font stacks. And for example, it could generate graphic novels. As one of its demo app is a Google Studio applet called Infinite Heroes, where you can generate a comic book of a specific style using two persons images. So yeah, so I sent one over. I played around with it over the weekend, and I sent it over to Dan. And Dan, what do you think? How are we as action detective?
I was pretty impressed. I mean, you only sent me 2 panels, so I don't know what the plot was or anything, but like it captured my essence, let's put it that way. Definitely drive super aggressively and have like a just absolutely white knuckled grip on the steering wheel while I'm doing so. So, you know,
I haven't been in a vehicle with you. I agree. It captures your driving essence very well. Yeah. So another thing that this new ability to generate text opens up is Andre Kabarthe had a thread that blew up over the weekend, where he asked Nano Banana Pro to fill out some college level exams using pen and paper, or
emulating that style. Yeah.
Quote, pen and paper. Emulating a handwritten answer. And it did a really good job as far as I can tell. I haven't taken chemistry 121, so at least not in a long time. So I couldn't quite figure out if all the molecular structures are correct. But assuming they are, I think the age of written exams may be over.
Assuming you can somehow print it without anyone noticing and then hand it in.
Yeah, we just need like a mechanical pen that can trace the output and like move your hand.
Have you ever seen those like full size plotters that they
No.
used to? Yeah. So this is I had been in some architectural offices in like the 80s because people in my family were architects, and they used to have these like mechanical plotter. They may still have them for like really large format stuff that'll do drafting, and it was literally like an arm, like a horizontal arm, and it had a little grabber that could pick one of 4 pens, and it would pick the pen, and just like the paper would go in and out across the arm, then the arm would go left and right, and it would like literally just plot the thing.
I guess in theory that's not so different from like a CNC machine.
Yeah, I mean, you're
right? You
basically
have an
for
X-axis
drafting,
and
you're
a
just drawing
yeah.
pretty much straight lines, right? For a plan. So it's just need to hook that up to Claude and ship it. Or
we just need
sorry,
to bring it.
Nano Banana. Everything's Claude to me now.
You're a Claude man.
I know. They have stickers now. I got real excited when I saw that.
Well, they had it. They had it as like a hidden feature in Claude Code when it first came out, right? It was like,
yep, slash
get us to send your stick. I really should have been on the hype train from day one. But not all models are these closed source of closed weight models. I want to point out that this week was also the release of Olmo 3, a new state-of-the-art open flow model released by the Allen Institute of AI right here in Seattle.
Open flow model.
So we know that, say, Claude is closed source. You have no access to the source code at all whatsoever. And then you have the open weighted models where you have the model weights and you have the architecture. So you can use the model under MIT license or Apache or whatnot.
You can, in theory, run it on your own machine if you have a big enough box.
Right.
Yeah.
Open flow, or what I really just consider to be truly open models, are models where you know the architecture of the model, you know the weights, but you also have access to the full training data. So you can, in theory, reproduce the entire model from scratch if you were given the right hardware. And I think this is an area that I am really looking forward to being kind of industry default, right? So Olmo 3 is a 7 and 32 billion parameter model released with its training data along with snapshots of various stages of training. So along with the release of the model, they've also released their training data, which is called Doma 3, a 9.3 trillion token corpus that was used to train the model. And I should add, the model itself has a fairly state of the open. It's comparable to, say, the Quinn 332, which is kind of the state of the art open weight model of a similar size. And of course, the closed source models are much bigger, but we don't have the training process for any of them. Not only do we have the pre-training data, we have the pre-trained foundational model along with the instruction sets and the RL models and the thinking models. And I think it's something that we should celebrate is no longer our models truly limited to, the big players, that we can actually also train our own models. Thing is, I've been using their playground a little bit, and they also have a piece of technology called Open Trace, where when the model answers your question, you can open up the Olmo Trace to find out which source document from its training model was being used to generate the answer that it spits out. So I know we sometimes talk about LLMs as being, like a lossy compression of its underlying training data. So it's really cool to see both the training data and what it's outputting.
It's fascinating too, because like a lot of the current stuff is really, essentially retrieval augmented generation, meaning like it's leveraging external sources to some degree to be smart in the way that, like, I mean, rarely do I ask Claude something and I'm not like, search for this thing, right? Because I don't necessarily care what it generates by itself. But that is pretty fascinating, especially if you could, like, show your work essentially.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. Huh. I'll have to check that
Yeah.
out. It's fascinating.
So a full transparency model, really great. It's local. Hire me? No. Anywho, moving on to the tool shed. This week we have an article from Anthropic again.
They're not
You know,
sponsoring us yet.
I just think they write really cool blog posts.
They do.
And they have
Yeah,
more
their blog is pretty
transparency.
great.
Yeah. So good job, Anthropic. The article is titled Introducing Advanced Tool Use on the Claude Developer Platform. So we have a lot of issues when it comes to MCPs. We've talked a lot about why do MCPs take up so much context length, just loading the MCPs. We also talk about how, maybe not explicitly on the podcast, but it is an issue where if we have a large amount of task that we are passing through an MCP, then every single other call in the same chat chain would contain that very large piece of text, essentially eating into your context for really no benefit. And of course, any kind of intermediary data being generated by Claude would also be sent repeatedly, right? Unless it's KV cached, but that's a different story. So apparently we're not the only ones complaining about this. Well, Anthropic also see this as a big issue. So they've introduced the tool search tool, where the agent can use tool search to look for the right tool to use at a given time. They talk about a typical 5 MCP server setup, with GitHub, 35 tools, Slack, 11 tools, Sentry, 5 tools, Fauna, 5 tools, and Splunk, 2 tools. That's 58 tools altogether. And that seems like a pretty typical MCP stack if you were doing some sort of full stack web development. Just the 58 tools together were consuming around 55,000 tokens before the conversation even starts. And they really only have around 200,000 usable tokens for the context length. So that's end up.
Not only that, but when you turn on that much MCP, like, the chances of it actually calling the most helpful tool drops precipitously, at least in my experience as well.
Yeah, my Claude.md file is just lost in between the MCP tool calls. So with this new tool search tool, the agent is able to look for the tools when they need it, and also to call it programmatically, so as to not have all the intermediary tokens being sent back. The other thing that it allows you to do is you can use this new tool. We're just overusing tool. We need to cut this at some point. This meta tool, tool search tool, to provide examples of how to use any of these MCPs, which I think is a really nice thing. Provide best usage examples. It reduces tokens. It improves accuracy. I think this is something that we've complained about, and it's good to see that is something that is being worked on.
Yeah, in real time.
Every week, something new.
Yeah, it's not surprising to me either, because we've also, as part of our section, we read a bunch of different articles every week about how to try to use some of these tools more effectively. And, like, the overarching theme has been for probably a couple weeks now, maybe even a month, is like, be careful with how many MCPs you use them judiciously, and, like, only turn on the tools you need. And I feel like there's 2 facets to that. So it's cool that they're attacking one of those 2 head on. And the other one I've already sort of mentioned in this is, like, tool call spam, right? There's too many tools. Like, oh, okay. But yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right, on to deep dive. What do we have here, Dan?
We got a lot of stuff. Yeah. So this is one that I scooped off of probably Hacker News, if I'm accurate.
For being honest,
which is a new paper that is Think in Diffusion, Talk in Auto Regression. So can I try to take a swing at it, and then you can make fun of me? And
I would never make fun of you, Dan.
You should.
Okay.
So if I understand it correctly, it's like, a lot of the reasoning models, right, have like the sort of thinking stage where it's talking to itself.
Hmm.
And essentially for that part of the process, they're suggesting using a diffusion model, which, like, as we talked about previously, my understanding of it is it basically starts with the full block of text that it intends to create, but is kind of
Hmm.
like, it's not real text, it's just like gibberish, and then it essentially works through it until it becomes the real text. It's a very
Hmm.
layman's thing, but that's why I'm on this podcast. And then so that's the diffusion part, and then auto regression is next token prediction, which is how most
Yeah.
LLMs work today. So it's everyone's hopefully familiar with that by now, but it's basically like you type in T and it's like, maybe H based on the
Hmm.
words ahead of it. Oh yeah, and then probably an E. It's the. So that was my takeaway from it. It's interesting because I don't think anyone to date has considered mixing entire modes in that way.
Yeah, I've only ever seen pure diffusion or pure autoregressive approaches. It's really cool that NVIDIA is doing this research. They have a pretty strong research arm, kind of publishing lots of state-of-the-art results. And the approach here, as far as I understand it is taking advantage of essentially the fact that auto regression is so slow is because you're spending so much time loading in your KV cache or the large attention matrix where you're trying to figure out in a very long string of text, how each token relates to another token,
Mhm.
right? Um, Given that so much time is being spent loading and unloading these large matrices, the amount of time to kind of tack on a couple more tokens at the end of the text string. If the whole thing is 200,000 tokens long, as we're just talking about in the case of Claude, having 5 more tokens at the end is really not going to make much of a difference.
Yep.
So what it does is it takes a diffusion pass. It tries to generate, say, a couple of tokens, 5 tokens at a time. But these 5 tokens are not generated auto-regressively. So they cannot say, oh, the 5th token is dependent on the first 4 that I generated.
That's
It's not conditioned on the previous tokens. So it
Mhm.
just says, hey, given the last 200,000 tokens, here are 5 tokens that would go along with the one I just generated. So for cat, it may generate dog, fish, feline, tiger.
Mhm.
So it may not make sense for all 5 of those to be in a sentence. Because for it to make sense, you must look at every single token before it. And so it does 2 passes. It generates a set of probable tokens via diffusion. And then at the same time, it uses the auto-regressive approach to say, hey, given everything that came before it, it's probably going to be tiger and not feline. So that generates the next token, but at the same time produces another batch of candidates. Now it's another set of dog, flowers, etc. That's what makes diffusion fast, but the quality takes a hit. So therefore, it does 2 passes, and it's somehow doing all this because how slow it takes to load the KB cache into memory. Doing all this work still takes less time than generating it one at a
the
time.
memory swap. Yeah.
The memory swap, yeah.
That part doesn't surprise me from my like understanding of traditional computer science, and the fact that like everything I know about even just doing inference, right, is it's incredibly uh memory bandwidth limited.
All right.
So um that actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and the really cool thing is it's able to do all this in a single pass, and of course they have I think a significant speed up, 4.7 to 5.9 times faster.
I wonder too, and this is this really brings some of the filthy casual in me, is like my understanding is diffusion models operate closer to doing like what would be running LLMs in batches,
Hmm.
right? Or sorry, auto regression models in batches, right? Which is why all the big providers batch their stuff. So I wonder if you're getting some of that like same kind of efficiency there. But again, this stuff is so far over my head. I'm just here for
We're both
the
just filthy
lulls.
casuals. We're
Yeah.
we're doing the filthy casual things. And seeing these new papers that can output tokens much faster without a degradation in quality. That's definitely exciting because I do think this is one thing that I think Gemini 3 does particularly well. Gemini 3 is much faster in inference in my experience than 2.5 and its competitors. I'm always surprised how quickly Gemini 3 is able to come up with a pretty good output at a significantly faster runtime.
And cheaper too, I'd imagine.
And cheaper, yeah, because of TPUs. Maybe not. I know nothing about TPUs. This is a fiercely casual part. The second paper we have this week is titled SSRL, self-search reinforcement learning. It's coming out of Tsinghua, which if you do not know, Tsinghua is the Harvard or Yale of China. So it's one of the biggest, oldest universities in China. And
I thought I was here to learn about AI, but instead I'm learning about Chinese universities.
the fundamental breakthrough of this paper is the insight that almost everything that is knowable is already in the pre-training data of a large language model, right? It's being trained on trillions of text. So it probably knows more than it lets on. And so if you asked the large language model to answer a question once, it probably isn't as good if you had asked it to generate K number of answers. And then based on these K answers, choose the best one. So if the model already knows the correct answer, why doesn't it just say the correct answer the first time? That is the key dilemma that this paper is trying to solve.
Well, I have a fun layman's theory about that I'll
it
spit
doesn't
out
like us
before you know. Think about how much of the training data on the internet is likely old school like forum posts where it's like, hi, I'm Dan, I have this problem, this has gone wrong, and then the second person's like, it's this, and then they're like, no, that didn't work, and then they're like, but it's this, and they're like, no, that didn't work, and then finally they're like, it's that. So who's to say that it didn't just like bake that into the model? Right.
It sounds like you like hacked my computer and found my chat history with Claude.
But I mean, that was like Stack Overflow back in the day, right? It's like, the accepted answer. No, it's this one. Oh, and then you come back and someone updates the answer 20 years later because, it turns out we don't use jQuery anymore or something like that. But
Ajax. Yeah, Ajax is no longer a thing. I used Ajax at work the other day, and I felt instantly 20 years older.
Nice.
So that's that kind of that is in line with the hypothesis of this paper, which is the answer's there, but there's so much noise that it doesn't always find it. And so the goal of the paper is to train the large language model to find the correct path by using a specific formatted search or prompt engineering, essentially. And in the prompt template, I'll read the prompt template to see what it's trying to do here. The prompt template says, answer the given question. You must conduct reasoning inside tag, think, and /think first every time you get new information. After reasoning, if you find you lack knowledge, you can call a search engine by tag search, query, close tag search. And you should return the top search result between tag information and /information. You can search as many times as you want. For multi-hop Q&A, you can break it down into pieces and search one by one. If you find no further external knowledge needed, you can directly provide the answer inside answer tag without detailed illustrations. For example, answer Beijing question, blah, blah, blah. It is essentially training the model, examining the search query result workflow to find a better answer than it would have come up with by itself, either on the first try or, according to this paper, better than it would have come up with via thinking models. And the explanation the authors gave for why this approach works better than reasoning models is since these are not logical thinking problems, all it is trying to do is figure out which pieces of knowledge it already knows and then determining what the best one is. Kind of like if I was to try and answer a math problem I've never seen before, I may go back and say, hey, what do I remember about algebra from high school? And then like I would dribble down a few things and then look through it and then trying to deduce what the answer might be.
At least you remember algebra.
I think I remember algebra. Well, and of course, the breakthrough here is the models are not actually connected to the internet. So it is not conducting an external knowledge search. It is doing search just from its internal memory banks. And it's still somehow able to outperform a non-search model. And when you do hook it up to an external tool calling for search, it is, of course, able to get that.
Like super effectively, I'd imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
makes sense. Huh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I find that I do this naturally when I'm working with large language models. I would usually ask for it to present me a few different potential solutions and then talk through the benefits and trade-offs. Because it already knows more than you think it does, right? So perhaps even just by reasoning out, here are 5 different ways to do this, or here are 5 different answers, and then talk me through which one it prefers, we're already getting some sort of performance gain.
I also wonder if that some of that isn't already built into some of the agent scripts in Claude Code too, because I see frequently it'll be like, if you ask it a pretty open-ended question about something, like, how do I get this, whatever, to not be broken, it'll be like, well, we could do it this way, this way, this way, this way. Which option would you prefer? It's always like,
Yeah, it's always sad when my own little hacks gets baked into the tool itself. I remember the day when its deep search started asking me for clarifying my search parameters. Like the exact day when it went from I would just take this and run with it to like, oh, but before I start searching, can you clarify this? Here are 5 questions. Answer it for me. But these are becoming best practices, I think, just industry wide.
Yeah, we'd already talked about that before too, around like when you're writing a big spec up front for something, like often it's surprisingly useful to just say, do you have any questions before we get started? And it usually will, and it might not be things that you would have necessarily thought to put in the original prompt. So
yeah, use it more as a pair programming buddy than underling for you to just go and bring me coffee. So that was my paper of the week.
You're a better person than me for reading all of that, because I didn't read that one. I did read the previous one, but not this one. It's pretty wild.
It's because you're too busy ranting. What got you so angry this week that you didn't have time to read the paper?
I have to say, first of all, in my defense, I think you think that I'm a much angrier person than I actually am, as evidenced by the fact that we even have this segment.
This is all getting cut. No one's hearing
oh no. Okay. Well, yeah. So this week is going to be, in the past I've done some sort of general ones where we've talked about things like context and stuff like that. But this week is a very specific problem that I ran into that kind of pissed me off while it was happening. I regularly work in a code base now that has 90% test coverage requirement. And more interestingly than that, they also have 90% branch coverage, meaning if you have something like an if in your code, both branches of the if need to get extra set. Well, not both, 90% of the both, right? Throughout the delta of the change set that you're committing needs to be covered by the test, which is fair, I suppose. I mean, you could go back and forth about what's a good number and whatever, but like that's not the point of this podcast. So anyway, I was using Claude to hit that 90% number. And particularly I had done something rather simple, which was adding a button, which I didn't think would be all that controversial, but surprisingly it made a pretty huge impact on my branch coverage. So I started working with Claude a little bit, and I was prompting it. I'm like, okay, so here's the coverage report, where we're at today. Here's what the uncovered lines are. Like, what are your? Actually, it's exactly like we just talked about. Like, what? How do you think we should fix this? Like, and so it came up with 4 options, and I'm like, cool. So I picked one and gave it a little bit more specificity, and we started rolling. And it goes cranking, and like, I think it's pretty quick, but it's probably like maybe 10 minutes of a little bit of back and forth, mostly just Claude changing things and rerunning the test suites that take a while to run. It
Yep.
goes, okay. And I go look at what it did, and it had completely rewritten the component under test and to a fair degree the entire test suite, and really had like just drastically reduced the quality of it.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, okay, screw all of this, like control C twice, like I'm done with it. You're dumping all the context. I don't even care. Reset everything in Git. I looked at it and I realized that basically all I had to actually do was change some filter params in a URL.
Mm.
And it was covered because it was like 2 ternaries that weren't being
Alright.
covered. So I guess one of the previous things I've talked about is like AI making us stupid is like maybe, but also like there's still no real substitute for just like you're leaning on it so much they don't actually just like look at what the problem is yourself
Mhm.
and spend that time to do that. And I think that's a way that, at least in this week, AI has made me a little bit stupid. So that was my rant. It's really just I was upset about wasting 40 minutes probably total on something that was really trivial and I could have done myself in about 5 minutes. So hopefully lesson learned. We'll see next week.
Yeah.
Come back to see if there's another rant about the same topic.
Right. We're all about giving out free business ideas on this podcast, and here's a new business idea. Create an agent that will reliably tell you when you should give up on using agents and do the work yourself, like a meta agent.
It's just one of those websites that always says yes.
I don't think it's always yes, but uh, that's certainly a problem because agents aren't good enough to do 100% of the task. The mental challenge of clearly this thing isn't solvable in the current conversation with the agent and I should just do it myself. That is a skill. I think that is a skill that I think the entire industry is dealing with right now. I've
Yeah.
had similar issues this past week too. It's like you just had so many back and forth that you decide, oh screw it, I'm gonna do it myself.
Yep. But it is also interesting that my first instinct was just be like, have Claude do it. And I guess that partially is because, okay, fine, I'll rant a little bit. Like, I think 90% test coverage is quite high, in my opinion. I think 80 is fine. I'm definitely leaning on Claude for that a little bit more than I would in in other scenarios, right? So that was definitely my go-to. It was just fix it. Come on.
Yeah, 90% branch is stricter than any place I've ever worked at. I think 90% code, yes, especially those exceptions and well, really, yes, just exceptions that
It is
fairly hard to test.
some well-tested code if you ignore the fact that Claude doesn't write the best tests.
Well, I think that's a very good rant.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Come back next
we'll see
week
more. Yeah,
to see if it continues. Well, maybe not next week because we got holidays coming up here, but
yeah. Okay, on to our final segment. 2 minutes to midnight, where we have a conversation.
Minutes to midnight. Yeah, they see we don't have the actual music, but they can't stop me from singing it.
They cannot. I might have to listen to provide a little background.
The actual song. Yeah.
Yes, where we discover where we are in the current AI industry bubble.
Slow
if there
motion
is a
pop
bubble.
that's happening in real time.
Is it happening?
I don't know.
Let's find out. All right. So I got a piece from Reuters here titled Mira Moratti's Thinking Machine Seeks $50 billion valuation in funding talk, Bloomberg News report.
So Mira was the former CTO of
Yep, of OpenAI.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
Yes.
Wasn't sure.
After the whole kerfuffle with
Sam.
Sam, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Sam. She left, and her new lab, Thinking Machine, is seeking a 55 or 60 billion evaluation. Deals have not been finalized, but on the other hand, the company also hasn't really had any product. It did launch a product called Tinker to help fine-tune language models back in October, but I haven't heard anything about it. So,
How long has the company been around? Did it say?
it did not say.
Last valued at $12 billion in July after raising 2.
Right. I don't think it's been around for all that long. Are these the Webvan or Pets.com of our age? is my open question.
It's not a bad question because, what is their output unless maybe it's yeah, okay, so here we go too. February 2025. It's 9 months old, this company.
Okay. So it's actually that's older than I thought.
Right, but also no surprise they haven't made any kind of like financial impact because it's 9 months old, right? And it's not like the type of research that they're doing is easy or whatever, but still you do have to wonder like what is the business model?
But 50 billion, which is
definitely.
I know inflation is high, but it's
too damn high. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so we got one data point. What else we got?
We got a article from Crazy Stupid Tech called "Boom, Bubble, Burst, Boom. Why should AI be different?"
Right. So this is a pretty fascinating read where it's actually a fairly lengthy article, but to summarize it a little bit, they took a very hard look at actually what we were just talking about, which was the original .com implosion of the 1990s, and kind of looked at some of the key contributing factors to that, and then looked at what's happening today in AI and like try to draw comparisons between them. And one of the things I found pretty fascinating about the article was they were really looking at like what are, assuming that we are in a bubble, they're looking at like what were the weaknesses that would trigger the market to have sudden shifts that would sort of trigger the collapse of the bubble. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And just to summarize really quickly, their big 4 weaknesses were too much spending, which I think we've sort of covered a little bit in this segment, too much leverage, which we've definitely covered in this segment, disappointed that they don't have too many space station data centers on the list, but that should have made the list, crazy deals, and then China.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting take to see what someone else's analysis does, because we always sort of do our own in the segment. So it was pretty fascinating. And their overall conclusion is yes, we're in a bubble, and it's much larger and much worse than the .com one, predicated on the fact that the U.S. economy today is almost entirely based on AI, meaning it's like overall less stable and less robust than it was in the 90s. So that's kind of terrifying to think about.
Right, because the .com bubble happened after a very long period of economic growth, whereas we are probably in a much shakier foundations this time around. Yeah. And the last article we have here is from Bloomberg called "NVIDIA Didn't Save the Market. What's Next for the AI Trade?" But this is really just a occasion to talk about NVIDIA earnings last week. It beat all the top line numbers, and the price jumped by 5% on opening, and then the market closed down 3.2% by the end of the day. Right. Which is not what one would expect for such rosy earnings. I think if there is a moment of kind of the top of the market, that might be it. This is not financial advice. No one should buy or sell stocks based on two filthy AI casuals talking on a podcast. But I wonder if looking back, we'll see, this NVIDIA Q3 earning as the top of the bubble.
The high watermark. Yeah, it could be.
So taking all that into consideration, how do we feel about our little AI bubble clock? I think we were at 20 seconds last week.
Honestly, I'm maybe more optimistic than I should be because of the NVIDIA earnings. Because I think that like if it really scared people, I mean, like you could look at like a 2% drop. Sure, it's a big deal, but it's also people like worried that it's the top, so they're trying to get out, and so I think you'll see. I mean, again, not a trader. I have zero experience in any of this. I don't even do day trading, for the record. But like,
I feel like day trading is hard. Day trading is like for experts,
for sure, or large language models, But At the end of the day, I feel like that could just trigger like sort of volatility bounces more than it would like the overall thing. We definitely haven't seen like the market collapse, right? So I think overall I see it as actually a kind of a sign of like, sure, maybe things are happening, but we're not there yet. So I would actually argue for setting us back a little bit. Maybe I'm just feeling optimistic this week, but
you're feeling very optimistic. So you're saying maybe the bubble is deflating a little bit.
No, I think we're still
very much
in a bubble, but I don't think we're in so close to it collapsing necessarily. Because like we saw like a sort of a shallow dip, but it wasn't a
like a cliff
aiming down. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well,
but that's my take. I don't know. What do you think?
Job security for another week.
Always a good thing.
I'm kind of leaning towards just keeping it at 20. But I could also go to 25.
Okay.
All right.
25. 25. Yeah.
25.
I was also just looking at their valuation, and it's like the high water mark was 11.3 so far. They've actually been down since then, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You're not here for the armchair financial analysis.
Yeah. Before I pull out the candle charts and the PE graphs and all of that, which is thankfully we don't get paid for our financial insights. On that note, that's another podcast in the can.
Yeah. Don't forget.
Why did you call it in the can?
Because probably you put film or tape in the can, like to protect it.
It's not the trash can. I was thinking.
No, it was like you've ever seen like really old school
film canisters?
Yeah, film canister. Yeah, it's the can. Yeah. I don't know.
It's the can. And that's a wrap for this week's episode of Artificial Developer Intelligence. Thank you so much for tuning in and spending time with us AI Filthy Casuals. If you enjoyed this week's show, the best way you can support us is by sharing it with a friend who you think will get value from it. And if you really like the show, please leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It honestly helps more people to discover the show, and we read every single review. Do you have a question, feedback, or a topic you want us to cover? We would love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at humans@adipod.ai. Again, that is humans@adipod.ai. You can find full show notes, transcripts, and links to everything we mentioned today over at our website, www.adipod.ai. Thank you again for listening. We'll catch you on next week's episode.